Hi there, I'm Allison Reeves, registered clinical counselor in private practice in beautiful Oceanside, British Columbia. Okay, this is going to be a 15-minute video on the concept of understanding. Now, this is a really valuable topic because understanding is very difficult to do. A lot of people can have a vague idea of what we're talking about, but to really get it, wow, you guys, this is difficult, okay? So for both the men and the women who are listening to this who are living with Parkinson's, please recognize it's going to be hard enough if you didn't have Parkinson's for somebody to really understand your life from your perspective. It's lovely when you think people are getting it. It's lovely when there is an interest in what you're going through. It's truly amazing. However, I want you to almost look at understanding as being the icing on the cake or the cherry on the cake or whatever that expression is. Because understanding requires a huge degree of empathy, which means literally to put yourself in the other person's shoes, like to put another person to put themselves in your shoes, and leave behind their frame of reference. That's the hard part. A lot of us can actually imagine for a brief span of time what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes, but we take ourselves with us into that. And truly getting it, true empathy, is not where we have our frame of reference. So, in other words, if we've been privileged or if we've had a lot of education, it's really hard to let those things go. That's why when we go into different cultures around the world, it can be very difficult to really get it from their perspective because it's so, quotes, foreign, so alien. One of the things that I want you to know, though, the concept of understanding is really houses a couple of different things that are possible for you to receive, okay? More likely. One of them is acceptance. And that's acceptance that what you're saying is what you're saying, what you're feeling is what you're feeling, what you're thinking is what you're thinking, what you have is what you have, what your choice is what your choice. Shouldn't actually say it that way. You know what I'm talking about, though? Because what goes on with acceptance is not like you like it or you agree with it. It's simply that you acknowledge that that's what the other person is saying or what the other person is doing. So I guess more than anything, when someone actually accepts us, it just feels wonderful. We feel contented, we feel safe, we feel secure. We don't find ourselves striving to explain ourselves or defend ourselves or challenging the other person at all. We just feel contented. You might remember a time when you were younger, perhaps as a child. Maybe you were sick at the time, or maybe you were just tired, and maybe a parent or somebody really close to you just held you. You know? They just held you. They didn't ask how you were feeling. They just held you. They didn't tell you anything. They didn't talk particularly. They just were there for you. One of the things that happens when we run into something like that is an incredible sense of being okay, just the way we are. And I think that's perhaps one of the concepts we're actually striving for. Maybe that's the feeling we're striving for, the sensation we're striving for. When we want understanding, we want simple acceptance from another person. There was a fabulously boring book, but a really good book, written by Manuel Smith, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. And in the back of the book, it has a few assertiveness skills. And one of them is, when being criticized, it's really a good idea to not deny, defend, counterattack, or withdraw. Well, one of the things that happens frequently is that when we feel misunderstood, when we believe ourselves misunderstood, we feel scared, we feel worried, and we tend to deny, defend, counterattack, or withdraw. Now, I hope you really get what I'm talking about, because what's going on is when we believe ourselves misunderstood. Frequently we try yet again to tell a person really what it's like. Or we just simply give up. We just kind of go, oh, whatever. I'm just not going to fight anymore. Or we look at them and go, you'll never get it. Maybe not with those mannerisms, but it's that whole idea, you'll never get it. You couldn't possibly understand what it's like being in my skin. Or we feel just at a loss. We don't know what to do. Or we try and explain ourselves. None of those work. When you feel heard, though, when you, I should actually say, when you think you're heard, when you believe yourself heard, when you feel happy that someone's listening to you, keep your fingers crossed metaphorically that they're grasping a little bit more of what it's like to really be you. I think one of the nicest parts is when someone's really curious. Not as an inquisition, they're simply curious. They want to know more. They don't quite understand it yet, so they're still curious, like, what's that like for you? And when that happens, it can be tiring to hear it. However, it's also very heartwarming to hear that a person is that intrigued by us and they want to know more of what we're experiencing rather than cutting us off. And of course, given Parkinson's, given any actual central nervous system disease, what happens is that we end up being slower, or we don't communicate as easily, and people will run out of time in listening to us. Isn't it wonderful when they've got the time? When we don't feel pressured? Isn't that lovely? And isn't it just great to be able to go, well, I don't know either. So you're both on the same side of the fence going, this Parkinson's is just wild, you know? I'm not sure what's going on either. Could you imagine being able to actually just say that? And not have to come up with a concrete statement as to what it's like? Because if you notice, there's no language for it. When you grew up, you didn't learn the language for, this is what Parkinson's feels like. You had no clue, because Parkinson's isn't a regular everyday experience for people. It's unique. It's rare. Not everyone experiences it. And because of that, there's going to be a harder time understanding it. I think one of the things that happens in my belief about language and communication and understanding and health in general is that with kindness and with compassion, we can give ourselves the room for not necessarily knowing how best to describe something all the time. So we give ourselves more room to be able to go, I don't know. And not take it as being that we're at fault for that, you know? So when another person looks to me and goes, I really don't understand what MS is like, I'm going, well, I'm really glad that you don't. You know? I hope no one has to experience what I've experienced. It's gross. I mean, really, could you imagine your worst enemy and inflicting Parkinson's on them? That would be cruel. That would be cruel. I think part of the thing, though, about acceptance is that it just makes us feel so much better that even if we've got acceptance, there's a possibility of understanding. The part about why I want you to almost hold back from believing that people really get it, really understand, is that when we do that, we think that they will have a similar belief that we will about our future or about a direction or about what we're experiencing. And unfortunately what happens is that doesn't always occur. As a matter of fact, it rarely occurs. And I think what we need to do is be able to know that it's very, very poignant for us what we're going through. And so we are a little bit perhaps more fragile, a bit more sensitive. I wonder why. right? We're the ones who are experiencing the disease. We're the ones who actually have the insider knowledge. And when somebody else thinks they get it and then makes a big assumption and it's even slightly off, it feels wrong. It feels uncomfortable for us. Because here they are, supposedly somebody who really had gotten it, and then we feel very betrayed when they don't. So I want you to hold it a bit in abeyance that a person really gets it. Recognize that that would be almost impossible. I'd love to say virtually impossible. I think it's quite rare. Okay. As a matter of fact, I want you to think about it. Who do you think understands you? Who do you think really gets it? And is it for everything, or is it for a small aspect? And imagine this, a person doesn't have to 100% get it all the time. However, they might have certain similarities or certain moments where they seem to really get it. And isn't that lovely? I think it's one of those things where you almost count the moments of joy on that one. However, with acceptance, you get many more of those moments of acceptance. It's when a person has decided to not stop fighting you. Okay, it's when a person has actually decided that you might actually know what it's like to live with Parkinson's more than they do. I think most people really know that. However, they might assume other times that they really know what's better for you. And you know something? They know what's better from their perspective. However, they're not you. And you have every right to choose your life the way you prefer, even if you have cognitive problems. And what happens is we want to be able to trust some people, that we will allow them to make decisions for us when we know that we're running into trouble. I think that one's a really good one. And so sometimes when we find somebody accepting us and then knowing that we'll most likely run into trouble because of our disease, we want to be able to put ourselves in their hands to say, please take care of me, because I think you'll do a good job of it. However, we'll still have to keep our fingers and toes crossed that they will probably go in the direction that we hope they will. They may or may not. However, what happens when a person accepts us, they're more willing to be kind. Okay? It's a difficult concept, isn't it? It really is. And I think it's something that gets bandied about by everyone. Most of us feel very terrible that no one really gets it. So what happens more than anything, rather than any explanation, is simple acceptance that what the person says has meaning. And they don't have to explain themselves. And we can just be curious about it. And kind and compassionate about it. Whatever that it might be. It might be how we think about ourselves now, that we're no longer able to function in society the way we used to be able to. How we maybe no longer can have sex the way we used to. How our intimacy is changing. How our fear is changing. How we're worried. All sorts of different things. So understanding is a lovely, lovely ideal. I still say go for it. Go head towards it. And on the way there, though, is acceptance and curiosity, kind curiosity from people. So this is Alison Reeves speaking to you from wonderful Oceanside area. And I hope this has been a meaningful video for you. And I hope you actually listen to it again and again, because there's some real gems in here. More than anything, you're okay the way you are, and other people might be having a really hard time here, as you are. Okay? And being able to really grapple with the concept of Parkinson's and how it's interfering with you. Anyway, it's been lovely chatting, and I wish you well.